So, thank you. Thank you, Pat. Mishmitruhis gan rakat Quirina Geary, Tamian Taquas, gan apa Rupen Luna, gan ana Lillian Luna, gan Mene Susie Olivis, Walk Papa George Olivis, and Walk Papa Me Tulum San Antonio Rancheria. Walk Mene San Juan Bautista Rancheria. Hello, everybody. My name is Quirina Geary. I am an enrolled citizen of Tumia Nation and currently hold a position as chair, servicing my community. I am the daughter of Ruben and Lillian Luna, granddaughter to Susie Olivis, great-granddaughter of George Olivis, and his great-great-grandfather was Tulum. He was the chief of San Antonio Rancheria, which is in the East San Jose Hills area, and he married my grandmother Yayate, and she's on the other side, San Juan Bautista Rancheria, which is Mount Umanum kind of space in that area. So thank you for having me today, and I appreciate everybody's time and effort to be here. I know you could be anywhere else, and you decided to be here, so we really do appreciate it. So thank you. Okay. Sorry, I'm not used to using Peasy, so.
If it will go wrong, it will. If it can go wrong, it will. Let's see. Screen sharing. Should we screen? Sorry, people.
This is for screen sharing.
I think we also need to be able to move it. Slideshow beginning. Hold on, people. Yeah, I don't know.
You want to try? I think if you click there and then open it up, maybe.
Which one? This one?
Oh, it's already in slideshow right there.
This
Oh,
one.
so
Because it looks like a slide up there, but I think that we're just.
we just have to maybe enter. Oh, it did something different.
What am I doing wrong?
Okay, so we're.
It all seemed like it worked for a second.
Oh, right here.
Yeah.
Oh, there it goes.
Okay.
Okay. I'm hoping everybody can see this.
Is everybody? Okay, just let me see real quick. Why is that not coming up for you here?
I can just,
Oh yeah.
just see where I'm at there.
So can everybody in Zoom see? Are we sharing Quirina's screen?
Yes, it looks like the introduction to the nation. Looks good.
Yes. Thank you. That's
Okay.
my mom.
Oh, is it? That's fantastic.
Okay. I think, let's see. Just gonna see if that advances or not. You might need to be in the PowerPoint itself. Okay, there we go.
Oh, we're good now.
So just up and down, right?
Okay,
Right.
got it. Okay, thank you. As most of everybody in this room probably knows and out there, so Tumia Nation is a tribe of Santa Clara Valley, and some of the outlying areas. We kind of color code this to match some of our family trees as far as color coding. So there's, where I said earlier, San Antonio Rancheria, where one of my great grandfathers comes from. That also includes Santa Isabella Rancheria, which is Almaden Park area. But the larger area it was called San Antonio Rancheria. Then you have San Carlos Rancheria, which also encompassed San Juan Bautista Rancheria. And those were where my direct descendants come from, or I'm direct descendants from my family from those places. We have other tribal members or tribal citizens who also have direct descendancies from other spaces within Santa Clara Valley and outlining areas. Tamia Nation had, our families were taken to several missions, all the ways from Mission Dolores down to Mission Santa Barbara. However, even though we were taken to those missions, we no longer identify ourselves as Mission Indian from those particular spaces. We've gone down to our particular village spaces or rancheria spaces. And how we see it, we don't see us as having as tribelets. Tribelets is kind of diminutive. It kind of makes it sound like we didn't have, culture or political system. We did have a structure. So we do try not to use the term tribelet. We use a tribe, or most likely for us, it's a nation. So we also have, the majority of the people of the tribe also have Mutsun heritage, Rumsian heritage, and Selenian heritage, and as well as some others. My kids are also part Pomo. So families intermarried with each other and still continue to do so today. But how we organized our systems was that we had individual villages. Outside of those villages, you had rancheria areas, and those larger rancheria areas, if you think of them in the sense of like you have cities, states, and then like a country. So Tamia Nation would be like our space, our country. Within that, we had those rancherias were more like states. And then within that, we had different villages. We had systems of intermarriage, of trading. Not every village had a medicine healer at the time. So only certain rancherias would have them, and then they would go out to different spaces, even outside of our own nation spaces, to go and help to doctor other people. And so, these are things that are different. I think because California is so diverse, a lot of people don't even realize that linguistically, we're the most diverse place in the world, only second to New Guinea. And so when you're talking about different languages and nations and political systems and social systems, we're all really, really different. And but we did have that inner network of social, of social gatherings, social ceremonies, those kinds of things. We traded ceremonies. You could buy or trade a ceremony if that's what something you felt like somebody needed, and that was something that they could use to help their community. So our communities, have had a inner network that even in our space even went out to Pomo territory. So my husband's a southeastern Pomo from the Lemon colony, and he was singing some songs, some songs were being, he had some old recordings, and we're on our way somewhere. And I was like, hey, what do those say? And he goes, I don't know. He goes, they say it's like in a celestial language. I said, well, in my language, this is what it means. And we went home because we've all, we've done research and stuff as young adults, and looked through all of our many decades of work and realized that those songs from our space traveled to Pomo territory, to Patwin territory, to other spaces. And so they're still singing those songs and dancing those ceremonies today. And so those are things which is great, because our community has lost so much. There's places that we can go to relearn these things. And some other things have happened along the way, but not all is lost for our people. Now it doesn't want to work now.
It's not progressing.
Mm-mm. Let's see, let me try this. Maybe I got you. So now, here. There we go. Okay, so our people believe, before, humans remain, we're here on Earth, that animal people roam the Earth. They actually created us. So there's a story of, crow, hummingbird, and eagle. They had a long-winded conversation about how they were going to create people. They tried different mediums. They tried sticks and other things, and it's like, no, that doesn't look right. Finally they, picked up some clay from the earth, molded it, and blew life into us. And that's how humans were created. So when we're talking about tribes having that connection to land, where no matter where you go in life, you're always going to be connected to that place, it's because we literally are the land. And our oral history tells us that. This is a photo of Mount Umanum. Mount Umanum has been mistaken as being called Hummingbird Mountain. It's actually Mount Hununu, and it means Dove Mountain. And same thing, there's a story about Dove who was during one of the great floods, the people were on top of Mount Umanum, surviving up there. And they were told, go down, to the earth, that was Eagle told Dove, go down there and find earth and bring it back up, for people. So he goes swimming around, but he was specifically told, but you cannot eat, dead people, right? Because everything, it was so catastrophic that there were humans, floating in the waters who had passed from the floods, who didn't make it up the hill. And so he goes down and he just couldn't help himself. And so he had, had this meal of human, and he turned black, and that's how we got Crow. And so the story that's only a portion of the story, but Mount Umanum really means Dove Mountain, and it has to do with that space for that story. So, our people lived here for thousands and thousands of years, depending on the space and how much has been, ground disturbance has been done, what studies have been done. It depends what space that you're in. If you go to San Jose along the creeks and riverbeds, especially Guadalupe River, there's some spaces that, will go down deep. I think they found a cache of borders over 30 feet down below surface level. So depending where you're at, you're going to find resources. It's not the same everywhere. Some places you may go like for instance, where my husband comes from, they'll go down like 8 feet, and they, usually they hit like what they call paleo soil or whatever you want to call it. But, they know at that certain space that there's, no more, that human activity is no longer there. It's different in San Jose, and it depends where you're at. And so for us, it's just, reminding people to be really mindful of that. And really anywhere around these, all the riverways, the beautiful creeks and rivers that we have, especially in the San Jose area, there's potential to find resources and our ancestors there. So we always want to be mindful of that. So for our people, the missionaries renamed most of our spaces after Catholic saints. And it was a form of assimilation and erasure. And so Tamiya families ended up, after contact, marrying with other Spanish and Mexican families. A lot of it was to secure living spaces, right? When you married somebody from those higher families who had just come in, who owned these land grants, you provided a space and safety for your family because now you belong to that ranch owner. And also your family was able to come, your extended family, your people, you were able to secure a place.
You're muted. Your microphone is muted.
Did it get muted?
Oh, yeah, I know. I
We're
was
back.
trying to check it from the other side, and I ruined it again.
It's okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. It happens.
Oh, no.
Thank you. Okay.
No? Okay, thank you.
Probably just a misconstruction.
No worries. we'll get there. During the occupation, when after the Mexican government took over, and then the American government came, a lot of those old rancho lands were given to even again another wave of incomers coming in to United States. And so our lands, even when we intermarried with the Mexican families, those lands were even lost. So Chamian families intermarried and owned lands where Stanford stands today, where Natividad is in Salinas. There was a couple of thousand acres there. Owns Alviso, the city of El Viso, city of Milpitas, and several other ranches, even here in Santa Cruz. And so, families ended up again, being homeless again, not having a place to stay. And with the state sanctioned, murders, underneath, Barnett and even Stanford, families had to leave, especially, at the time, families had migrated from Santa Clara Valley and moved to different spaces, went and worked in Mission Dolores, went to, Mission Santa Barbara, and ended up coming to Mission Santa Cruz. Families stayed in Mission Santa Cruz for about 3 generations. My great-grandfather, George Olivas, was born in Santa Cruz, and his records are all at the Catholic Church there. And so, our families are also part of the Lorenzana family, the families who actually lived at Mission Santa Cruz for some time. So we have a lot of history, not just, the Indian history that goes back thousands of years, but we didn't just cease to exist after, newcomers came in. We still existed. We intermarried with those families, and some of the families for some time had prestige, within those even Mexican and Spanish communities. But when the Americans came in, everything was lost. And like I said, families ended up having to basically flee for their lives. Lands were lost. So most of our people ended up migrating to the San Joaquin Valley, where, hundreds of Tamien / Mutsun and Rumsian people still live today. Everybody is most people are enrolled in some tribe. Some are enrolled with Tamien Nation, and others are with the Amamutsun tribe. And so Tamien Nation today, we're families who still have a wealth of knowledge, knowledge that can be found anywhere else. You can't learn this in a book. You can't read about us in a book. You have to speak with us. It's our story, and it's our story to tell. And we're the expert on our own lives. And it's difficult sometimes when we're reading some of these archaeological reports, and they talk about, they reference Kroeber or Milliken, or some of these these scholars, but they never talk to us. And that's something that we want to change. That needs to change. Right? It's really difficult. It's almost like they talk about us in third person, even though we're here. It's almost like we no longer exist. Like we're people of the past only, and not that we had continued to exist throughout time, and that we continue to have a living culture. We're truly living Indians. And so, I was born and raised in Madera County. I was born, they call it, I think it was like the American Indians, it was like a vocational school in Madera, on the outskirts of Madera. My dad in the 60s, there was through the Indian Relocation Act, where they were retraining Indian people and sending them out of their communities for assimilation. And my dad, it was hard, it was difficult. Our families worked the fields. I was born and raised working in the fields. It was tough. And so he wrote to the BIA and says, I want to go to school for my family. I want to go back home. And we have the old letter. It's at the San Bruno archives when we found it. And he said, my family's in San Jose. I belong in San Jose. That's where we come from. I want to go to school there. But they didn't allow him to go there. They said, there's a school in Madera. You can, we'll apply there and you can go there. And in a way, it was good because it didn't take us, even though this was our original home, it didn't take him away from the community. I would have been born and raised in San Jose, and the rest of my family would have stayed in Madera. That's where most of us are today. I am very fortunate that we stayed in a rural area. And I will say this, as much as it breaks our heart to have been pulled away from our homeland, we were able to retain our community over time. We have that continuity. I was raised, not just by my parents, but by, my aunts and my uncles, who also scolded us and, made sure we were right. Or, some of, family members stayed with other family members for an extended amount of time. They were there and truly took care of us. In our language, Anshaknish means auntie, but it literally means little mother. And this was our community, and we were really raised in a community that way. So I find it fortunate that we were able to go to places together. We not only traveled back to the coast to work the fields. We worked in, San Jose, Hollister, Gilroy areas, families always went back to go work seasonally. And it was 4 to 5 months a year our families were taken to go to work in those spaces, because that's all that was for us. So education was not a priority in our families. They needed to put food on the table. My dad went to the 7th grade, and he said when he got there, they pulled him in the office and said, "You have 0 credits." And he says, "What's a credit?" He said he had no clue. And he's like, "Oh, well, I'm not going to graduate." He said, "You're not going to graduate. You can't catch up." He said, "Fine." So he never went back. And so that's just really common with indigenous communities. It's just how it is. So those are the communities that we brought in, but we were rich with family. We were rich with community. We were rich with knowledge. I learned to pick mushrooms with my mom as a little kid. And, my aunts and them, they all cooked greens, other things. My, dad and uncles, they all hunted, fished. My kids still hunt and fish. These are things that over time we've been able to maintain and to keep. And so even though it's difficult to not be raised in your homeland, but to have that sense of community, and knowledge of who we are as an Indian people, and to keep that is just something that I think if we would have stayed in the Bay Area, I don't think that would have happened. So in a way, it saved our identity. So we still play traditional games. Hooch is what we call it. It's a game of where you have 2 sets of bones. It's kind of like you say, "Oh, which hand is it in?" It's kind of like that, but it's done with a lot of singing, high stakes. Now there's tournaments that you can go to all over United States, Canada, even Mexico. Mexico, they call it Bayon. I don't know what they call it in Canada, but in English they call it hand game, or grass games, they'll call it. And so those are things that we still do. The picture in the middle and the bottom right, that's Nia and Kiel, my younger son and daughter. The first time they played, she was probably about 6 years old, and they played against some elders at the big time at a Grinding Rock or near Jackson. And they beat these elders who had been playing their whole lives. These little kids won, and they're all happy. They won like $2,000. And so our kids, saved it. I don't know. I think went to Walmart afterwards or something. They spent their money. But, we still have our, religious spaces. Unfortunately, unfortunately, but fortunately, we didn't have land for our spaces. So we, in 2000, we started to bring some of our ceremonies back, and we built a traditional arbor, which is on the left. And it's made with interweaving of, different types of, willows and pepperwood and other medicine plants. That was our first attempt to try to get things back. To the right is a roundhouse. I had permission from my husband, his community. This roundhouse is in our backyard. He's a religious leader for his community. And, as we started to bring things back and actually learning language, things started to happen in the sense of dreaming. So as Indian people, dreams are sacred, and they guide us and give us direction on what to do. And as we started, bringing language back 30 some odd years ago, things started happening to our citizens, our people. Dreams started happening, and some of the ceremonies and stuff started to come back, and they're coming back in a very organic way. In the sense of dreaming's helping to guide those things, and using, fill those kinds of things have helped, fill in those gaps. And so it's been a journey, and it's something that we've been doing for quite some time. In 2004, we, wrong way. There we go. Or excuse me, 2014, we brought back the Tuda ceremony. Tuda means thunder in our language, and that's the ceremony to the left. It's the first time in over 100 years that this ceremony had been brought back. And it's done in a, same thing where it's done, it's a mixture of old and new. There are old songs, but there's also new songs that had been dreamt. And then new dances within the ceremony started to come about. And it's a really beautiful ceremony. And it's something that we've been doing since 2004. So it's been about 10 years, but it'd been, away for some time. The center photos, we had a coming of age ceremony for our daughter. This was the first coming of age ceremony in over 100 years, not just in my community, but in my husband's community. and they kept their dances going. They kept, a lot of things going, but the ceremony for the girls, that had stopped. So it was things that we both knew about from our spaces, and brought that together to bring this back to honor her. And she's going to be the first of, hopefully many in the future, to keep that going. And then also, to the right is, we teach our kids when they're small. They don't necessarily get out there and dance when everybody else is out there, but we start to teach them when they're small, to get used to it and to start to, to understand. But they're quite older when they finally get doctored in to start learning. There we go. And so, we still make regalia. We still do all these things, tule boat making, making skirts. We gather, it's a lot of work. For the feathers, you have to hunt for them or know where certain birds molt. There's certain rules that go with these things. Like we can't like pull feathers, from a crow. Even if we find it on the side of the road, because we do pick up roadkill, but certain birds we're not allowed, even if we find it, we're not allowed to like pull crow feathers. We have to go where they molt. So it's because, crow and meadowlark, took people down into the water for 16 days and taught us all the songs and dances. And so they gave this. So because of that, there's certain rules that we have with those, those and their deities, with those deities that we still have to honor those things. And so those are some of the rules that go with some of the things that we do. These are photos of our some of the Tamian babies. There's like 2 of them that are on tribal council right now. So, we've been, as we're bringing things back, we're bringing old traditions back. And so babies are being raised in baby baskets. Sorry, I still can't get used to this. In 2017, we had we finished our dictionary in 2016. We published it. We published it open access. We wanted to make sure that everybody had access to it, whether in the future. We have to make sure that, and it was a decision that we made that, our language committee and other leaders in our community decided open access was the best way to preserve it. And every tribe is going to be different. And the reason we wanted to do that is because we never know who's going to be in leadership. It could be somebody who has a different value system where they want to hoard it. I've actually had experiences where, I was told you cannot give that, dictionary, language, information to your own people. Like I wasn't allowed to do that. And it's just like, I did it anyway. Got a lot of trouble for it, but that's okay. But, it was, and really the dictionary was work of, as an individual. Unfortunately, at the time, there wasn't a lot of support for this kind of work. So, we did it, anyway. Family members, pitched in here and there, but we stuck with it. And Natasha Warner, you'll see in the top right, she's a wonderful person. We worked together. I met her at Berkeley at the Breath of Life program, and she was a student at the time, and we ended up continuing to work together many, many years later. And so we finally finished the dictionary. We have a text collection, a bunch of other stuff, but it's all open access. But what we found interesting is that even the dictionary, nobody used it when we had it in a PDF format online for free. They use the hard copy. They don't use the online version, which we thought that was interesting. We had no idea. But anyways, that's our community. Okay, so now the good stuff. So, we all know recent laws, AB 52, and I believe everybody's really familiar with all of these, what these different items mean. And one thing is that under AB 52, tribal cultural resources, elder testimony, oral history, our own archival information, and other, and archaeological testimony or the information that you use is also relevant for tribal cultural resources if it's certified and relevant, with the tribe. So I think, when this new law came about, I think some people were really nervous, and it almost feels like they think, oh, well, the Indians are taking over. And that's not it at all. It's that, we finally have a seat at the table to have the opportunity to give input and recommendations to agencies to protect our cultural resources the way that we feel is fit. We think it's a great combination to work with archaeologists together with tribes. I think we come from different perspectives, but I think there's a way to respect each other's opinions and work together. So an archaeologist can say like, okay, so I found this, and this is we tested it, if they're allowed to test, and it's this old, or we found this charm stone and we think it's used for this, and then we could say, well, we know that those were used in doctoring, or that maybe isn't a charm stone, I think that's a fish weight, or so it's like there's information that we have that we can help parse that out, figure that out, and I think it's an important team to have that, but to have that mutual respect for one another. So respect elder testimony, respect that oral history, because it matters, and it matters to us. Archaeologists have access to the Chris Center, the documents. Well, so do tribes now. Like, we have all the documents, and we get updates every 6 months for our area. So we have that information, but we also have testimony from elders. We have, elders who have told us, we used to go here to pick this, or my grandma said this was from, this certain rock meant this, and this is what it's called. We still have those stories. And so those stories are useful. And those are things that are important to us, and they should be part of the record when we allow that. Or, it should be something that's from your end, that we're supported by you, because in all actuality, agencies will still take your word over ours. And instead of taking both of our words and making sure this document or the mitigation measures are on the conservative side and meets both of our needs, a lot of, especially Silicon Valley, these agencies want to please the applicants, right? Because they want these big companies to come in because they want the tax funding from it, or they want, whatever the compensatory mitigation, or the, whatever it is that they want. They're not, a lot of them aren't listening to us, right? So a lot of times we do need your support. Also NAGPRA is something that's, also recognizes, tribes and cultural affiliations such as kinship, biological connection, archaeological, and so on. Unfortunately, we're still having issues with, even though the law came out, I think, was it 2014, we're still having issues with agencies really understanding the tribal cultural resources. And really what that means. And so TCRs and archaeological, sites. So there's two different, perspectives. We can look at it from these two different ways. So like archaeologists, you identify archaeological sites. Tribal experts identify tribal cultural resources. So sometimes tribal cultural resources are also archaeological resources. TCRs are archaeological sites, burial sites, ceremonies, also sacred spaces. It could be a certain, tree. It could be just the air, right? This space was used for ceremony, right? So, or it could even be a place of prayer. A lot of people don't realize, like, we have plants that we connect with. So, there's certain things that we go and we put with a certain plant, and that plant we're connected to it. And so those are spaces for us, and it could, be different from different individual or whatever. But, if I have a specific plant in a certain spot, which usually is not like off the side of the road, or it's not, it's somewhere that only I know where it's at, that space is sacred, and nobody else will know that but me or my family. And so those are things to keep in mind. Also tribal cultural resources are also considered historical resources. So like our families intermarried with a lot of the rancho owners and other people. We worked at different ranches, and we hunted and we fished, and we did other things in those spaces. And so the historical resource could also be a tribal cultural resource. For instance, there's in Stanford, there's a property there that they have. So there's Sears, right? The Searsville Dam that's being built. So one of my uncles used to own that property. But when he lost it, it was supposed to be lineal descendant to my grandfather. Well, it ended up going somewhere else. It didn't go to, the land didn't go where it needed to go. But there's an old adobe there. So that old adobe isn't just a historic resource. It's also a tribal cultural resources because our people live there and work the land there. So for us, that's also a TCR. And we just feel like, tribal knowledge should be given deference over archaeological, assessments for tribal cultural resources. So we know, you often are hired to do assessments of cultural resources and tribal cultural resources. And you might reach out to us to ask us like, hey, what do you feel about, this or whatever once in a while. And we're expected to give you and provide that information for free when to help you with your report. But it's our information, right? So, we also encourage, you all to put into your when you're giving your your proposal, that you add in funding to pay the tribe because you want us to consult with you, right? You want us to ask you or to give you information. Well, that information, we have to look up in our database and not just in the Chris Center information we have, but our own information. And if it's a really historic place or a place that has a lot of history for us, that takes a lot of time. And so that should always be put into your proposals, that you pay the tribe as a consultant to help you develop this. Either that or they can directly contract with us to provide that information. Especially large projects that are, by large bodies of water, there's a lot of information that we have on those spaces. And it's not fair to say, like, give us everything you got so we can get paid for it and write this report, right? That's not fair to us. And so that's something, our time is very valuable too. And so try to contract with tribes to do that, or have them directly contract with us, because many of us can write those reports. Tribes receive over 5,000 notices a year from state, federal, local agencies, institutions, NGOs, and so on. It's insane. Like, we get some emails, we get some that are, certified letters. I mean, these stacks and stacks of craziness. Tribes, even federally recognized tribes who have large casino and funding, don't have the resources to answer all of those letters. And so if it's something that for a fact that there's going to be an unavoidable impact, keep reaching out. Reach out 2-3 times, make a phone call, email. Don't just send a letter and say, oh, they were notified. The agency, help them also. Agencies understand that even though we don't respond, we may miss, because I miss a lot. If we don't respond, they are still obligated to protect tribal cultural resources, regardless if we answer or not. It's their job. They have to protect it. And so oftentimes, at the very least, tribal monitoring, right? Tribal monitoring is really recovery. It's not, it's not, lowering the impact, right? It's really recovery, but it's better than nothing. At least we'll be there and making those decisions. One thing I think is really important is that people, also, understand that, every tribe is going to be different based on their particular situation. And so right now, there is so much development in our area that we are no longer asking them to rebury on site, because they're constantly redisturbing our ancestors, redisturbing them. So what we're doing is actually looking for a parcel of land to repatriate everything onto a separate space that we have control over. We don't want it to be in a park where people are walking their dogs or stepping all over. These are the types of instances like we've been offered by like agencies. Oh, you can have this piece of land. It's like, no, thank you. I don't want somebody stopping their dog to, to do their business on my ancestor, but thank you very much. People aren't thinking about those things. Really, tribes need, spaces for repatriation. Encourage due diligence, encourage developers to reach out to tribes even before they purchase properties. So if they're going to, purchase land for a big project development, do their homework. And that doesn't just mean hiring you guys to do that and you asking us. Ask us. I've done lookups for free, really only because I want to protect those spaces. So it's just like, reach out, encourage that they reach out before they even purchase land, because a lot of times it's not going to be worth it. And then, by the time we get notices AB 52, it's too late. You're so late in the game. And then they're upset with us because they didn't budget for it. Well, that's not our fault that the law requires you at that time, at this later time to reach out to us. But they, so encourage them to, reach out. We always say, early and often. One thing, tribes may not want archaeological testing. Mitigation measures often include testing and a testing element, but mitigation measures aren't supposed to cause an impact. And so testing causes an impact many times. And so if a tribe decides, like, let's just monitor it heavily and then not do the testing, then support it. I think that's important. That's important that we support one another. And then if it is something that moves forward with testing, make sure a tribal, representative is there. And so, reach out and get a tribal monitor there along with you as you're doing it to monitor the work. Confidentiality, everybody knows, like, don't, disclose information, but also don't disclose it to other tribes. A lot of times, you think because they're also, Ohlone or Pomo or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, we're different, even though you have all these different Ohlone tribes, we have separate political systems, social structure, even religion now. So we're all different. And so, just be mindful of that. Not everything is for everybody. Tribes may request programmatic or compensatory mitigation. If there is an unavoidable impact to tribal cultural resources, we are entitled to compensatory mitigation. And this is the hardest thing for agencies to understand. And they get it when it has to do with watersheds, restoration. They do it for everything else. But if you want to do it for tribal cultural resources, they just like, they don't know what to say. They're and then right away it's a hard no. They're like, oh no, we can put interpretive signage. We can do this. And it's like, wait a minute, the impact is supposed to, or excuse me, the compensatory mitigation is supposed to impact the community in which is being impacted. And we don't need interpretive signage. We already know who we are, right? So those kinds of things, that's not compensatory mitigation. It could be land, to help with repatriation. It could be funding into a language program. It could be to help do a documentary or video to help, the tribe with whatever it is that they need. But help support that. Those are things that are in the law that can happen. And, a lot of the agencies, the larger agencies, they want, creative mitigation. And that's something that we need your support with that as well. We should be included in the development of the monitoring and treatment plan. That's really important that we're at the table. We have a say with when we're out there and then what happens to anything that's found. A lot of times we're not included in that. And that's really painful. They're non-renewable resources. They don't grow out of the ground again. Like, once they're gone, they're gone. And when they're tested, when we don't want them tested, we don't want it. Like, for us, we don't test our ancestors. It's not anything, not to say we'll never do it, but I don't know. I don't see a need for it. We know who we are, but we don't like to do that only because it's destructive analysis. If there's a way that it comes out where it's not, then maybe that's something we'd consider. But until then, like, that's not something that we promote. Also no permanent curation, because then you're just creating more AB 52 claims. So, temporary curation and then back to the tribe to repatriate. That's what our goals are. A lot of times, and I know a lot of, again, everybody knows who they are, right? So there's these archaeologists, or some of them who have like storage units and garages and, full of our ancestors and artifacts that they've just been hanging on to for whatever reasons. Sometimes they're just waiting for them to be tested, and then it kind of falls off because the owner didn't pay for it. And, these things we know this is happening. We know they're out there. And from what I understand, when AB 52 kicked in, like, these people were scrambling, getting them out of their garages, hiding them at their friend's house. It's like, just give them back. Like, what's the big deal? You want to take photos of them? Take photos of them. You want to take some samples for, testing, maybe let's see what it is. Let's talk about it. But do the right thing. And the right thing is encourage your colleagues to return these things to our people. We'll let you, like I said, take photographs of them, whatever, as long as they're not, we don't allow photographs on ancestors, but, they belong home. They really do. This is who we are. This is our history. And it belongs, back to the people. Like I said, the tribes donate their time to consult. So just be mindful of their time and their resources. Notice the preparation is really too late in the process. Just do their due diligence, everybody all the way around. Sorry, I'm just looking to see if I think I talked about all of this already, but, oh, I didn't skip it. That's why. So I guess in the end, like tribes, we believe we're the experts on tribal cultural resources. You're the experts on cultural resources, we're the experts on tribal cultural resources. But I think together, we can, really work together and learn a lot from each other. It's tribes, it's our history that's being, its impact. Early consultation is free. We always say early and often. If a tribe hasn't answered, follow up. Support programmatic or compensatory mitigation. Just confidentiality is important. And then, we often donate our time, so just be mindful of our time. It's for us, we can learn a lot. Like I love if there's something and I don't know what it is, I might call Pat or I'll call Chuck from one of the other spaces, but because we don't know everything. We don't know. There's a lot that we need to have to learn. And just be patient with us, especially when we have new monitors out there. We train them in class, we show them some things, but really they're going to learn when they're out there. Just be patient with them because they're learning about the scientific part of it. Many of our citizens, they'll go to ceremony, they do other things, but some of them maybe never saw what midden is because it's not something we're brought up to do, right? We're not even supposed to be touching that. Those are things that, it's taboo for a lot of people. Like for me, when I go out there, I try not to touch things unless I absolutely have to. And there's a process that we do when we leave those spaces to make sure that we're safe when we go home. And so, together, I think, we can learn a lot from each other. I know that, there's certain things that and certain things that we know. But when it comes to tribal cultural resource, we finally have that seat at the table. And we think it's so important that we continue to have that seat, but with your support. We're your friends, right? We're not your enemies. We want to work together. And I have never heard of a tribe saying that they don't want to work well with archaeologists. But I think there's a way. It's just we have to start that conversation. So thank you. Sorry, I try to go as fast as I can, but I think we're almost at a time.
Okay. To make sure the Zoom was working.
Still working.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions here in the audience or in Zoom land?
I have a question, Sarah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your family photos.
Mhm.
That was really special that you brought those with you. Where have you found spaces to be able to gather?
Oh, well, we jump fences and seriously, we don't have a choice, right? We go into reserves and reserves. We don't have a choice. I have a photo of my husband and my kids climbing down the cliff on this rope to get seaweed, right? To get fresh, clean seaweed that's safe to get. That's just what we have to do, and we continue to do it. There is, and I will say, our tribe was just, we're one of the, I think it was like 33 or 34 tribes to receive funding through the Nature-Based Solutions Grant. And so we are approved to purchase 235 acres in the East San Jose Hills. And that will be the first 100% controlled tribal land in the South Bay in over 200 years. And so that's a place where we're going to be able to gather those spaces. So we're going to be able to restore it. we're thinking about doing some type of maybe indigenous agriculture. We're looking at maybe even raising bees. There's different things that we're looking at on how to not just manage the land, but make a little bit of income to be able to keep it going. But yeah, we were very, very fortunate, and yeah, we're really excited, and we never thought that this would happen. My aunts, my father didn't get to see it. He was really an advocate and worked really hard for our tribe. But my aunt says, she goes, I'm just glad I'm alive still to see it happen. And so we haven't announced it too much. There's been some other articles, but until we sign it over and we actually get everything we need, we're just kind of laying low. We don't want to get too excited. Just never know what's going to happen. But yeah, so we go where we can. And real quick, there's a story. When I was a little girl, we went out to go pick mushrooms, and families would go, like, you'd have 10 cars that would drive out. Everybody would pile up, right? Everybody, would come out, and we were picking mushrooms. And I was really frustrated because my mom was teaching me about the color of the underbelly of the mushroom. And I wasn't picking the right ones. I remember being frustrated, and somebody yelled, yell, and families, I see people running, and my mom grabbed me and my niece, and my mom's tiny, and she grabbed us, ran over, jumped, threw us over the barbed wire fence, which we crossed to get there. And everybody was really quiet, and then everybody laughed. And it wasn't until I was an adult, I found out what happened was that there was a Bramer bull chasing everybody. And so we were trespassing on a farmer's land. And that's just what families have to do. If we don't, we not only lose like plant identification, how to pick it, when to pick it, you lose, like, there's certain songs and stories that go to those things, but that's a loss for opportunity for language, for, all these different things, religious activities, right? When you sing and you say these things, that's religious. And so all those things go with that. So loss of access to land is not just loss of access to land. It's so much more than that. And so it's really important that tribes are able to get, I don't really care for cultural easements, but that's all we can get. Our tribe is really advocating for land back, and hopefully true land back with no restrictions, where families can actually move back home. So we've got, this starter, land, the 235 acres, but now we're going to be working towards purchasing land to get families back home, to get them back home and workforce housing, because we travel back. It took me to get here, it took me 5 hours to get here. I should have only taken like 3.5, but to get back to San Jose, I mean, it's 3.5 hours, easy to get back there. And that's driving back and forth, or families have to be away Monday through Friday, which our tribal monitors are staying in a hotel room. They're away from their families, and they have a right to make a living. They have a right to protect them. But I really worry about the impact it's having on our families and, in the home. So that's our next to-do list, is to get tribal housing for people to be able to come back home, and workforce housing, because we also hire other people besides tribal members. So, yeah.
Any questions?
I have a question. Thank you so much. It was a fantastic presentation. Really cool to see things happening. A verge of different communities who combine practice. Anyways, your brain all that. But you highlighted a point in AB 52 that was talking about certified by the relevant tribe. And I was wondering if maybe you could provide a little guidance in that, because of course we know that, doing consultation through AB 52 as agency archaeologists or CRM practitioners, we get these lists that have, people, individual representatives from, that represent multiple counties that they're listed well outside of their defined territories,
Mm-hmm.
but it is mandated to reach out to everyone on the list. And so you have this ethical and legal contradiction in how to determine, who the relevant people are to be talking to, and especially when there's contested territories between tribal groups already.
Right.
Some guidance on how to move through that.
Right. Yeah. No, that's tricky when we get that really often. So the Native American Heritage Commission, they're revamping their list, right? There's going to be new guidelines coming out, and we're really excited. We've been consulting with them, and we have attorneys who have been helping us consult with them to make sure that hopefully it will kind of reel people back into their own prospective areas. Just because you're Ohlone or you're Yokuts or Pomo doesn't mean, you're Indian from all these large spaces, right? We had those those traditional boundaries, and they really were controlled by particular tribes, waterways, all these things were, even families, right? We all know the controlled certain resources. And so yeah, I would just say, continue to follow the law, send out your notices, but the people who are from there, because I know a lot of times, we'll get a contractor say, hey, they need a tribal monitor at this space, and we're hoping for our territory, they're calling us. Because a lot of times you have the power and you decide who you call many times, right? And sometimes some of them will call like the yes people. Yeah, they let me test, so I'm going to call them. Or they're cheap, I'm going to call them. Let me tell you, Bay Area, it's not cheap. A lot of people complain like, oh, you guys charge so much, and it's just like, really, this is the Bay Area, and I still donate my time. Right. So if we had a full blown department, like, your archaeological firms that you have, and if you had a secretary, some of them are huge, right? You have like Stantec, they do, multiple things. And, we all know Far Western, right? They all have, but they have offices. And I walk into their office, I'm like, man, I wish I had an office, right? So, even with the way the rates that we have, we still can't afford an office. We can't afford a GIS person. Like I'm everything. I'm trying to figure out how to make a map on, using, Google Maps, like, what do we do? We're doing the best that we can, but definitely you have, a lot of times you guys are being appointed like, oh, we need a tribal monitor, find one. So if somebody's from a particular place, because there's no law saying who you have to hire. You have to consult, you have to notify them to consult, but who you hire, they won't get in. They're not supposed to get involved in third party contracts. It's usually up to the developer. But a lot of times, I just got one this morning from someone who is saying like, oh, I, turn in, we want bids or whatever. And I'm like thinking to myself, okay, who else are they asking to turn in a bid for our village space? It's literally in our San Juan Bautista Rancheria village space where my grandma's from. And it's just heart-wrenching, because in the end, they're the ones who make the decisions on what happens if something's found, not ancestral wise, but, other resources. And it's heart-wrenching because we don't have the same value system. We see things really differently. And so I would say, reach out, do your due diligence, do what you have to do. But I think there's enough information, I think, out there to find out who's really from where. And like for us, like we're transparent. Like I'm drawing up something right now and I'm sticking our genealogy in there because I want them to know that's where we're from. It's not cultural affiliation. That word cultural affiliation has really caused a problem. And I'm hoping that gets corrected. Until then, I'd just say continue to reach out.
I have a question, just regarding documentation. As some of us that work as professional archaeologists are always writing reports and this and that. And it always seems to me like a little bit missing that, the tribal perspective or the tribal cultural resources, there's not like a reporting or like a documentation of that like it's included with, all the mitigation measures and stuff towards the end. Do you think that's something, just in your opinion, that should be integrated, or would that be just overwhelming amount of work for somebody? Or?
No, I think it should be. I mean, in the ethnography section, it should definitely be a collaboration, right? The ethnography that you definitely want, the tribe's perspective, because we're living people. We didn't just like disappear. It's always like just the really old stuff, and missions came and that's it, and we're gone, right? You don't see us anymore. And then there might be something like, oh, but they're, now they're trying to bring back their language, and they're trying to, that's just, it's kind of, it makes us seem irrelevant. Like, oh, like we don't know anything. We didn't grow up knowing who we are. All of a sudden we popped up and, out of nowhere. But, some of us do. Some of us were able to maintain, quite a bit of knowledge, and it's in reality, it's a miracle that we actually exist and was able to still keep that identity of being, Indian. We don't say Native American. We always just say Indian. I don't know why. California Indians, most of them prefer to be called California Indian for some reason, but that's what we prefer. But yeah, I mean, just include them, but include their time too. It's like we have a form. I haven't started using it yet. So if you're to send me something, I'm going to send you this back that's saying, sure, I'll do a lookup for you. It's going to cost you this much. And then you could take it back to your developer or whatever and add it to your thing. But really, I mean, you have to pay that amount to go, Chris Center, everybody else gets paid, right? Tribes aren't getting paid for their time. And, we deserve to put food on our table too, just like anybody else. We shouldn't have to continuing to give our information and our time and our labor for free.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you very much for putting Muslim English Dictionary online. And I have a question. I think that your tribe has been multilingual.
Oh, multilingual?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, most tribes like spoke several different languages. So
Okay.
places could be places were not multilingual. People are, right? So
People,
yeah, people are multilingual, bilingual, whatever, but places had their own language. So for us, it would be Tamian, and it's considered a Northern Ohlone. There's only 2 documents that I know that exist that are in the Tamian language. And so if I ever get some relief in what I'm doing now, that's like the next thing is using Mutsun and some of the other languages to reconstruct Tamian. And I don't know if there's enough yet because we have to verify that that really is Tamian language. But that's the next thing that we're going to be doing. But until then, everybody in the tribe is also Mutsun. And so we just speak that language. My grandmother spoke like 4 different languages. So it's just, most Indian people spoke several languages.
Are they similar? Tamian
Oh,
language and Mutsun
very,
language?
very similar. Very similar. Yeah, absolutely. Like, and then, even all of the, the Ohlone languages, they're very similar. A lot of the root words are similar. But, we're supposed to be related. We're also related to like the Miwoks and the Yokuts language as well, where they say we're one ancient people from a long time ago, but it's not, it's not similar at all. Like it's been so much time that, we've had that distance where I have no idea what they're saying. One word might pop up here and there, but no, not at all. But as far as Ohlone, but we live close, so no one really knows. I mean, there's these guesses that it's been like 2,000 years since tribes have been separated, or everybody has this different theory. There's no way to tell because we stayed and we continue to intermarry. We stayed in the same space. We're not separated like English and German or Russian, where you're separated by oceans, right? You're separated, so we're still together. So there's no way to tell. No one knows.
And I live in Watsonville.
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 Oh, Watsonville.
Yeah. And I asked my question regarding what language the people of the village spoke to Dr. Martin Rizzo a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And his answer is not sure.
It's Mutsun.
So I asked Linda Yamane too the same question, but not sure yet.
Yeah. No,
What do you
Watsonville. Yeah, Watsonville's Mutsun. Santa Cruz is, I don't know what the home people called it, but we would call them Akweswas, means the Western people. They were different. They spoke a different language than Tamian or Mutsun. And Akweswas is a Northern Ohlone language. So it's more closer related to Tamian, Ramaytush, and what they call Chochenyo today. And then Mutsun and Rumsen and Cholone are all Southern Ohlone. They're a little bit more closely related. But yeah, Watsonville is definitely Mutsun.
Mutsun language.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Politically, they are independent.
Mutsun, yeah. Politically, Mutsun is different than Tamian.
No, my question is regarding the people who live in Pahara Valley, the village of.
My grandma said that Mutsun, there was a Mutsun Nacion, she said, because she gave James Alden Mason some information on language. And this was like, I don't know, I want to say maybe 1916 or something. And she said it was the Mutsun Nacion. So basically all of the villages and all the rancheries and spaces that spoke in Mutsun, she said that that's what she called them, the Mutsun Nacion. She was born in 1833, and she was one of the last speakers in our family. Actually, there's this debate, like she was Ascension, who we got most of the information from. Her mother was really good friends with my grandmother, Josefa Velasquez, and she was the last speaker in our family, fluent speaker. But Ascension would say, no, I don't know any language. You go talk to Josefa. She was a generation older. Josefa would say, no, I don't know any language. You go over there and talk to Ascension. Nobody really wanted to talk to him. But Harrington finally was able to create a relationship with Ascension and get that information. But yeah, my grandmother lived in Watsonville. She lived off of Lake Avenue, right next to the St. Francis School and cemetery. She's actually buried in that cemetery right across the way. Yeah, we have a lot of rich history in this space too, both on the Mutsun and Tamian side.
So your grandmother or great-grandmother?
My great grandmother,
Josefa.
Josefa Velasquez.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
I have some questions on Zoom.
Go for it. No, I'm looking at Zoom. Let's see. Any questions from Zoom? Yeah. Any other question?
Okay, thank
you
you.
so much for
Thank you for
your
your time. Thank you, everybody.
And just a couple announcements one more time. Just the, let's see, where it is. Adobe Castro, June 27th, 10 to 2. Come and join us. September 12th is you're laughing. September 12th, Jacob Stone is our next speaker, and we will have 2 months break. So enjoy your vacation, and thank you for joining us. Bye. Okay. Sorry, I need to figure out how to stop.
We're gonna have cupcakes.
Yeah, cupcakes.